To ask what is the role of attitude in a person's success or failure is much like asking what is the role of granite in the Himalayas, or what's the role of H2O in the Pacific Ocean. Attitude comes very close to being everything about success or failure. With a great attitude, a person can succeed with very little else. Attitude makes the sale, or loses it. What is attitude? Well, the dictionary describes it as a matter of bearing or mood, but it's much more than that. Attitude is what sets the stage for what we want or expect to happen. The person who goes through life, as millions do, saying, with my luck, the whole thing will go down the toilet, goes down the toilet over and over and over and over again. His attitude sets the stage for failure. He or she expects failure. He or she thinks about failing, and he or she fails over and over and over and over again. A person can have a great education, but with a bad attitude will generally fail. The attitude of excellence always results in excellence. You and I can see to it that we maintain an attitude of great expectations. It's more fun and so much more interesting to adopt and keep such an attitude, and it results in our achieving new levels of achievement. You know, we're not born with a drive for excellence in our lives and work. Those are uniquely human qualities that come from learning or experience or both. But we are born with exuberance and curiosity, and when these qualities are combined with great expectations, we can expect marvelous results. We try harder. We put more of ourselves into what we do when we have an attitude of great expectations. That's good enough won't do, not for a moment. I remember reading about Sir Henry Royce, whose habit it was to stalk about the old Rolls-Royce factory. One day he overheard one of his engineers saying to a worker, "That's good enough." He immediately broke into the conversation by shouting, "It's never good enough. That's what we're all here for, to make it better, and then to make it better than it is today, and then better than it is tomorrow. Never say it's good enough. It isn't." Or words to that effect. That's what the goal of excellence is all about. It demands an attitude of great expectations. Today, the name Rolls-Royce is synonymous with all that is remarkably fine about something. It's a symbol of quality. An expectant attitude, an attitude that expects great things to happen, that expects success, seems to have an uncanny way of shaping future events and bringing together the most astonishing coincidences. Suddenly other people around us are infected by our spirit. Their morale goes up. They're as infected with the idea of excellence and success as we are. A great attitude is marvelously infectious. It can spread throughout an entire company or organization. If there are great attitudes at the top of an organization, there'll be great attitudes throughout. Everyone begins putting more of himself and herself into the effort. An American woman was once so impressed by the ragout at a fine restaurant in Paris, she asked the chef if he'd give her the recipe. He was happy to comply, and a couple of years later, back in the same restaurant, the woman chided the chef about not giving her the complete recipe for the ragout. "It doesn't taste as good as yours," she told him. The chef went over the recipe again with her, and when she told him she'd followed it to the letter, he looked at her for a long moment and then said, "Madam, perhaps you left out the most important ingredient of all. Perhaps you forgot to throw yourself into it." That's the difference that a great attitude can make, regardless of what we happen to be doing. Roger Staubach, one of the greatest quarterbacks in National Football League history, called me one morning several years ago and asked if I would write the foreword to the book he was working on. Well, long a fan of Staubach's and the Dallas Cowboys, I told him I'd be delighted and asked that he send me a copy of the manuscript. Later, in conversation with him, he talked about the role of the quarterback in leading the team, and he mentioned that a winning attitude on the part of the quarterback, in his posture, his facial expression, his voice, the plays he calls, in his entire attitude, can do more than anything else to lift the spirits of the team for the extra effort required. So much of sports is a mental game, he went on to say. And here again is the "we become what we think about" role in our success or failure. Life is a game, too, and in many ways much like the game of American football. Practically all of life is a mental game. Our minds direct us. They tell us to lead or to follow, and quite often to do both. But it's our attitude, more than any other factor, which will determine our success or failure. An attitude that says, "we can do this," will do more than any other single factor in getting the job done, whatever it is. Our true attitude towards something has a palpable effect on those about us. It can even affect animals. A horse, for example, is affected by the attitude of its rider and will often react accordingly. It's as though we send out vibrations which are picked up by those about us. Women tend to be particularly susceptible to the auras or radiations of others. We feel good about a person, or we feel nervous and ill at ease, even suspicious. Most husbands have at one time or another experienced their wives saying to them after meeting someone, "I don't trust that person. There's something fishy about him," and their appraisal is often later confirmed. Many times over the years, I found myself over-tipping the waiter or waitress with a great attitude about doing his or her job. A friendly, happy, positive attitude often makes up for so-so food, or other mistakes that might, had the attitude been average or poor, ruin a dinner. People who serve the public and depend upon tips for a part of their income can often double their tip income by simply improving their attitudes. They'll also cut down on the number of complaints. It's a fact of life that the great majority of people begin their days in neutral as far as attitude is concerned, and depend upon whatever stimuli they encounter to set the mood or attitude tone for them. If things go well and it's a beautiful day, their attitude may be fine. If things go wrong or it's cold and raining, their attitude will reflect that also. Not understanding the importance of a great attitude and what it can mean to us, they put their attitudes in the hands of others or the elements and live accordingly. It's a reactive kind of life. And it's all the worse for those millions living in rather bleak and dismal surroundings. And the day will usually corroborate the expectations. Their attitudes broadcast their expectations, as do their facial expressions and postures. Yet it's a day of their lives, a day filled with the opportunity for success, even adventure, and who knows what synchronous and serendipitous wonders for the person with great expectations. If any one of them knew it was to be his or her last day of life, how sweet, how precious it would suddenly become, how filled with color and interesting faces and sounds, how great it would suddenly become to be of service and experience every minute of the day. I recall the day that the American hostages held for so many months in Iran were returned to the United States. The looks on their faces, the way many of them kissed the tarmac upon disembarking from the plane. Blessed freedom, just to be home again. As Mr. Levin, the correspondent who escaped after 11 months of captivity, shouted upon his return, "I'm a born-again American." How sweet it is after it's been taken away for a time. Yet how many millions of us take our days for granted and go about them grudgingly, defensively, with the attitude that says, "Do unto others before they can do unto you." Thousands of people, upon discovering what a change in attitude can mean for them, actually do become born-again Americans, or born-again Canadians, or born-again whatever nationality they happen to be, because there is no fragment of this freedom of ours that can't be turned into the success we seek. There are no jobs so humble that they do not have lurking within them the opportunity for greatness and all the success we could possibly want. But it takes that expectant attitude to see it. That kind of attitude draws back the curtains of ordinariness that tend to cloak the work of the majority in common everyday raiment and exposes the possibility within. You know, you and I are on a kind of holiday on Earth. Out of the mystery, we appear to share our lives with the other living things on this small, blue, blessed planet. We spend a time here before merging back into the mystery once again. During this time, let's enjoy ourselves to the fullest. And to do that, we need to, as wise old Socrates admonished us, examine ourselves and discover what we're best equipped to give for the journey's fare. There's really no good excuse for not doing that which we most want to do, nor for not enjoying to the fullest those experiences we find to our liking. They make the holiday all the more interesting and rewarding. Being on this holiday, there are few times that warrant genuine sadness unless we take upon our shoulders the problems and miseries of the entire world, and that's futile. We need only brighten the corner where we are to the very best of our abilities. That's our part of the bargain, to give it our best during the time we dedicate to service, and the rest we can enjoy with those we love and share our lives. My wife and I have lived in Carmel, California for a number of years. Since my work involves reading, research, and writing, it makes little difference where I live, but it's generally acknowledged by those who have experienced the Monterey Peninsula of California that it's one of the most delightful and beautiful places on the planet to live. Millions of people visit Monterey, Carmel, Pebble Beach, and Pacific Grove each year. They enjoy the 17-mile drive, the charming village of Carmel set in its own forest, on one of the country's most beautiful stretches of coastline. When the people Diana and I meet on our frequent travels around the country and overseas learn that we live in Carmel, California, they invariably comment on how fortunate we are to live in such a beautiful place. How fortunate we are, as though our living in Carmel were some sort of cosmic accident. We live in Carmel, California because we chose to live there. And we chose to live there precisely because of the great beauty of the place and its delightfully cool summers. Hey, you lucky guys, they'll say. Of course, we are fortunate, and we're lucky, astonishingly so, but it's a part of our plan. It's not a result of the capricious nature of chance. We also have a home in Southwest Florida, another beautiful and bountiful place where we can have a boat and do some fishing and exploring of the surrounding seas. We're on a holiday, we two. How about you? Do you live where you live because you chose to live there, or because your parents chose to live there? Is it your holiday, or theirs? No matter where one lives in the United States or Canada, he or she is among the most fortunate human beings on the planet because of our liberty, our space, and our bounty. But if we're in charge of this holiday, it should be up to us to decide where we're going to spend it. There's as much opportunity in Norwalk, Connecticut, as there is in Dallas, Texas. Have you ever heard of Stu Leonard of Norwalk, Connecticut? Stu Leonard has the world's busiest and most profitable store in the world. Did you know that? Yeah, it's a dairy store surrounding a milk processing plant, and people come from 100 miles around to do their shopping at Stu Leonard's. He has giant Greyhound buses that bring older people free to his store from the surrounding areas, so that they can do their shopping and enjoy his marvelous prices. Everything that's sold in Stu Leonard's store is sold in greater volume than in any other store in the world. He sells more chocolate chip cookies and ice cream cones than anyone else in the world. And it's the same with milk and cottage cheese and cream and meat products and the hundreds of other things he sells. He sells salads by the ton each week. And Stu Leonard, a former milk delivery route man, lives in Norwalk, Connecticut. Where do you live? What are you doing there? And how is your attitude toward this holiday we call life on Earth? Stu Leonard's attitude is marvelous. I know because I called him on the phone the other morning and we had a long talk. He's a happy guy because he's made the most of himself. What a world of meaning is in that sentence. He's made the most of himself. I should have added, so far. He told me on the phone that he's building another store in another community. I hope he builds them all over the country if he can maintain the kind of controls enjoyed by his customers at the one and only Norwalk store. Just as there's no job that doesn't have the seeds of greatness lurking somewhere within it, Stu Leonard was a milkman, there's no community that doesn't offer the same opportunity. I'm sure most of the people of the world have never heard of Norwalk, Connecticut. Most of the people in the United States have never heard of it. But many wonderful things have been done there by people who chose to do a bit more with their holiday on Earth. It isn't at all necessary. I recall reading many years ago about an American couple traveling in India who noticed a pleasant-appearing young man sitting by a bridge. They could see him from their hotel window, and he was there in the same place day after day. One day, while walking in the area, they stopped and asked the young man why he simply sat by the bridge all day, day after day. He explained that in his religion, they believed in reincarnation, that we live many times. This life, he said, I'm sitting out. Well, fine. He chose to sit out this life. But he chose to sit it out. He wasn't sitting it out by default. He chose to sit it out there by the bridge, a high-traffic spot where he could no doubt obtain enough food and drink to keep him alive. He was doing his own thing, as the young people put it during the hectic 60s. But he was not serving others. He was not sowing, so his harvest was meager indeed. One small spot on the planet and subsistence. It's not enough for most of us. There's much too much to see and to do. As Robert Frost puts it, I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep. And another of his poems, incidentally, is titled, Happiness Makes Up in Height what it lacks in length. Thinking of our lives as holidays on the planet Earth can change the mood or attitude from one of a defense-oriented nature, survival at all costs, to one of happy exploration, the exploration of ourselves and the world in which we find ourselves. Each of us determines his or her own value by what we choose to do, how we choose to serve. I spent 23 years of my life residing in Chicago and its environs. Talk about Opportunity City. Chicago always has been and remains to this day one of the great boom towns and opportunity centers of the world. Nor can a more interesting population mix be found anywhere. It's the world in microcosm and teems with customers for everything under the sun. Wherever there are other human beings, there's opportunity. And with modern communication miracles, you could do well living wherever you might choose to live. But choose. You can reach as many millions as you choose to reach through advertising or direct mail, even if you live in Weed, California, or Cleveland, Florida, or Oil Trough, Arkansas, or Nowhere, Arizona. How about a villa on one of the Greek islands or the Italian Riviera? Portofino is a beautiful place. Have you considered living abroad for a few years? The greatest opportunity in the world is wherever you happen to be. All my life, at just the right time and not a second sooner, I've been blessed with the greatest good fortune and the most wonderful people. I've had my share of setbacks, but with steadily recurring faith that the system I've outlined in this short program really works, I've watched it confirm and reconfirm itself over and over again. Yes, we obtain what we make up our minds to obtain. We fulfill our expectations in each of the three vital areas of our lives. 1, our work. 2, our family. 3, our income, and not necessarily by any means in that order. I knew I wanted to be a writer when I was still a young boy. The broadcasting came along as a serendipitous spin-off. So my work has been satisfactorily progressing from the time I was mustered out of the Marine Corps following World War II. Since 1950, I've been writing and broadcasting my own radio programs, and for many years in Chicago, my own television programs. And since 1956, I've been writing and narrating recordings in an attempt to spread the word about achievement. One of the most difficult ideas for the human being to fully assimilate is that while we are social creatures, achievement is an individual and personal and isolated affair. That is, while we are a part of a population of many millions and must find our being in successful relationship with such numbers, in fact our success depends upon it, in order to succeed in the steady pursuit and completion of our goals, we must think and act as distinct and separate, even different creatures. Just as a successful marriage, filled to overflowing with joy and genuine love for one another, depends upon two distinct, different individuals whose characteristics and experience perfectly meld them into an even better whole. Our success as individuals operating in a highly populated environment must be an individual thing in each of the three categories: family, work, income. We need all three, and keep in mind that income comes in two distinct and important categories. It's the money we earn for the service we render, and equally important, it's the psychic income we receive for the service we render, and for the full or nearly full utilization of ourselves in the process. This psychic income comes from both the family and the work, and results in our self-esteem, the way we feel about and accept ourselves. We need all three, and we need the income in both categories. As I was writing this message, the Federal Express courier arrived. She's a delightful, attractive young woman of perhaps 26 or 7, with whom we've had a happy relationship for many months. I asked her if she enjoyed her work with Federal Express. "I love it," she said. I think we had known that by the energetic and cheerful way she delivers and picks up letters and packages. I commented on the hundreds of young women and men who have found meaningful employment because Federal Express has come into being. Whereupon our young courier invited us to attend the Federal Express open house party on an upcoming Thursday evening in Watsonville, a town a few miles north of us. "We're hoping Fred Smith will come," she said. "Who's Fred Smith?" I asked. "Oh, he's the man who started Federal Express," she said, obviously surprised that I didn't know. "We've invited him, and I sure hope he's not too busy." Fred Smith, I thought. What an ordinary name for a man who created a whole new world of mail and package delivery. What an astonishing and talented person he must be. I hope he's successful in his family life as he is in his work. Think of the hundreds of thousands, the millions his fertile imagination has served. And to think we didn't even know we needed Federal Express until Fred Smith put his beautiful system to work. Now there are thousands of jobs where before there was only a vacuum. Jobs for pilots and ground personnel, millions of dollars in equipment, and all the cheerful, energetic pickup and delivery people like the happy young woman who serves us. The prosperity radiating from such an enterprise is incalculable. I hope Fred Smith makes it to the Watsonville opening, too. Federal Express is a good example of the positive effects a good idea put into action can bring about. And what a perfect example of creative thinking. Nothing about it contains a new idea, except the system of collection and distribution at Memphis, Tennessee. Letter and package delivery is one of the world's oldest businesses. Airmail is as old as aviation. But door-to-door overnight airmail from any 2 points in the country was a new idea whose time had definitely arrived. It was only natural that the Federal Express people would come up with Zap Mail, since rapid communication is their business, office-to-office letters in 1 hour instead of overnight. Well, how about you and what you do? How can creative thinking revolutionize your work? After all, if Fred Smith can do it. Work, income, psychic and financial, family. On a scale of 1 to 10, how do you score each category of your life? How would you score your work on a scale of 1 to 10? How about income, psychic, and then financial? How would you score those on a scale of 1 to 10? And how about your family life? Well, mine has 10s at every level, I'm happy to say, but of course I've been at it for some time. Let's add creative thinking as our fourth factor. Our list now reads work, income, psychic, financial, family, and creative thinking. I think I can hear someone saying, "I'm not much of a creative thinker." You don't have to be much of a creative thinker to come up with one idea. I have a good friend, with a wonderful family, incidentally, who was in the auto rejuvenation and resale business. He rebuilt automobile engines and in the process got his hands so deeply invaded with grease it was nearly impossible to clean them without at the same time destroying his skin. He began experimenting with various creams that were great skin softeners and conditioners, which he and his wife mixed with various cleaning agents. It was his hands they were trying to save, and in the process, they produced a cleansing and skin-protecting product, a wonderful product that has since made them millionaires many times over. The point I'm making here is that his business was rebuilding cars. It brought about a problem: the skin of his hands and forearms. By solving the problem, this man and his wife produced a product that could help hundreds of thousands of other people whose work involved getting their hands deeply soiled. They multiplied their service factor by the hundreds of thousands, just as Fred Smith did, and they've been reaping the bountiful rewards ever since. When someone succeeds, everybody benefits. The entire community and the nation benefit, and in time the whole world can benefit. Think of the countless things that did not exist in the past from which you benefit every day. Each of them was a good idea, and good ideas are free. Implementing them may cost a great deal of money and time and hard work, but it had to start with an idea, not the money. A good idea attracts money. The better the idea, the more money it attracts. Form the habit of using a legal pad and pen. Jot down your ideas, especially those that affect you emotionally, those ideas in which you want to personally become involved. Recently, I received a letter from a woman in New Orleans who for many years has been deeply affected by the community's poor treatment of stray and unwanted pets and domestic animals. She said she had joined the women in the SPCA and had donated funds to the problem. She had picked up strays herself, but felt that her efforts were much too inadequate to do much about what is to her, and millions like her, a pressing national disgrace. One day she got the idea that a television series of the MASH type, as she wrote, centered around the care and protection of animals, would help provide an ongoing crusade of the kind she wanted to bring about. Well, of course, there are no MASH type television programs. MASH was and is unique. It stands alone, a marvelous example of excellent writing and acting with a marvelous theme, the absurdity and bloodshed of war. But I knew what she meant, and I agreed with her. I wrote to her that it was now up to her to get some scripts written and get in touch with the right people. An idea with no substance to it, nothing one can hold in his hands and rub against his brains, is just that, an idea, no more. Its value depends upon its implementation, the part that demands the rolling up of sleeves, the midnight oil, and the perspiration. But that's fun, too, when you're on the track of something big and worthwhile. It takes, as I've outlined earlier, 100% commitment. There is no success without risk. Remember that balancing bar, with success at one end, risk at the other. There's more success lurking in intelligent risk than in all the so-called safe jobs in the world. The world is full of people quite willing to toss out an idea as long as they're not involved in the work or the financial risk. A man wrote to me some years back and said, "I have an excellent idea, Mr. Nightingale, if you'd be willing to write the book about it." I told him that if he really had a great idea, the words would come to him and he could write his own book. It's true. When we have something to say, the words are there for us. The person who succeeds in America is the person who sets his or her own wages, goals, and lifestyle. Successful people are those who discover that life is quite ready and willing to meet their requirements. They set their incomes to meet their needs and wants through discovering within themselves a marketable factor and developing that factor to whatever degree necessary in order to derive the appropriate reward response. Unsuccessful people may be said to be those who make their lifestyles fit whatever wages they receive. They put themselves on the receiving end of things and have little to say about their own welfare. Successful people put themselves behind the wheel of their lives. The unsuccessful ride in the passenger seats. Almost everything has an economic base today, at least for over half the human population. We're usually rewarded by the amount of money we receive for what we do, and what we do in a free society, and what we charge for what we do in a free society are largely matters of personal choice. If we find our best interests and opportunities for personal expression within the framework of a large corporation, we can so develop and apply ourselves as to reach whatever levels of accomplishment and reward we're willing to earn. It takes time to succeed, and it should. We need seasoning for the success we decide to achieve. We need to earn our stripes through the daily passage of time and experience, so that each successive step is accepted and applauded by those who have come to know us. Meaningful and richly rewarding journeys take time. They take preparation and careful planning, and as every seasoned traveler knows, they're subject to the vagaries of incidents and the mistakes and inefficiencies of others along the way. But if the journey has its adventures and misadventures, it has a definite upward momentum, and there's no doubting its eventual destination, for that is the goal of the person in command. Each new upward step along the way prepares our resolute traveler for the next plateau, and if he or she doesn't lose the exciting vision of the goal to be reached, or meet with an untimely end, the silent tragedy of war and accident, the goal with all the trimmings and more will be his or hers. Remember Cervantes' words, "The journey is better than the inn." The journey is our life, our holiday on earth, our time here, as we successively set new goals or dive back into our great river of interest, or both. We receive what we fully expect to receive, and usually a good deal more. We become what we think about. We become successful to the extent of our true desires and determination, and we do so by building on our strong point. At what are you best? What gives you the most, the deepest satisfaction? Whatever that is can be honed to marketable proportions in some way and applied in service to others to earn you the rewards you seek and should have and will have. And that's your part of the bargain. No one's supposed to do that for you, or hold your hand, or rush to your aid every time you slip or fall back a little. That's the earning part that falls on each of us and prepares each of us for the future. There's help enough on every side if we're wise enough and energetic enough to make use of it. Help in the form of books, recorded cassette programs such as this one, skills to hone, and the numerous people who do come to our aid once we're on course. But such people need not be sought nor importuned. They come of their own natural need, like magic at just the right time. Events begin to fall into our lives like missing pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. They're the mark of the person with the attitude that tells the world he or she knows where he or she is going and fully expects to get there. They approach their commitments with intentionality and delight, as my friend Dr. Charles Garfield puts it in his book and cassette program on peak performers. The late and distinguished Dr. Abraham Maslow put it this way: if you deliberately plan to be less than you are capable of being, then I warn you that you will be unhappy for the rest of your life. You'll be evading your own capacities, your own possibilities. And let me add this: if you think you can succeed in a large way and play it safe at the same time, you're sadly mistaken. Success takes risk. It takes full commitment. You go out on the limb, so to speak, and take your chances alone. The warm, comfortable, huddling masses must be left behind, along with the old neighborhood and the small dreams. Risk and success, again, are at opposite ends of the same balancing beam. You cannot have one without the corresponding weight of the other. It ups the ante, raises the greens fee, and limits the membership, but it makes playing more fun, and you seldom have to wait in line anymore. The late motion picture producer Mike Todd put it well. He said, "Being broke is a temporary situation. Being poor is a state of mind." Who has success in America, or Canada, or Mexico, or Peru, or France, or West Germany, or Japan, or anywhere else? Those who have taken charge of their lives and are directing them to their own best use. Who does not have success? Those persons who have not taken charge of the direction of their lives, but have simply reacted to the environment in which they found themselves. They have simply become a part of it. Our environment at any stage of our lives, remember, is a mirror-like reflection of ourselves at that time. It may be a transitional stage, or, as more often the case, a permanent statement of ourselves and the extent of our preparation and contribution. In one of my radio broadcasts, I used the true story of the woman concert pianist who entertained the city's women's club with her brilliance at the keyboard. Afterwards, over coffee and tea, one of the local women exclaimed, "I'd give anything to play the piano as you do." The great pianist, her cup of coffee suspended in midair, fixed the woman with a knowing look and gently said, "No, you wouldn't." In the sudden silence that followed, the embarrassed exclaimer reiterated her statement in injured pique, "I most certainly would." The pianist shook her head and settled her cup in its saucer. "No, you wouldn't. You'd love to play as I do now, but you wouldn't spend the 25 years and 5 to 7 hours a day, 7 days a week, learning how to play as I do." Well, the statement was self-evident. It was true. If it were not true, the woman still had perhaps 25 or many more years of life remaining to learn all she would need to know to play the piano very well indeed. People see a successful person living the good life with all the perquisites of modern success, and they say, "Oh, look at that. Man, would I love to have what he or she has. How lucky can you get?" Lucky? Luck is what happens when preparedness meets opportunity. Such people don't know about the planning, the study, the preparation, the long hours, the hard work, the steady, implacable resolve. All they see is the end result, and they call it luck. Is success worth it? Is success, as we've defined it here, worth the trouble, the effort, the commitment, the dedication, the perseverance? Yes. Yes, of course it's worth it. The time will pass anyway. Why not put it to constructive, productive use? Everyone benefits. Nobody loses. In every field of human endeavor, it's the successful men and women who make the important difference. They see growth and improvement as the natural order of things, and they can see themselves growing into new arenas of achievement and commensurate reward. "Only that day dawns to which we are awake," wrote Henry Thoreau. What a pity it is for a human being with the gift of consciousness to take life and all that's connected with life for granted, to live each day as his or her due and quite likely find more to criticize than to be grateful for. Yet that's exactly how millions live out their lives. They often give the impression that they have a contract with forever, when it's really for only a handful of years between the bookends of mystery. Why not give it all we have to give? Why not make a thorough exploration of ourselves, and by so doing find what it is we have to add to the quality somewhere? To make life better, because we made an appearance here, to serve in the way we think we can serve best. Succeeding is so much fun, especially if it means moving several plateaus above the one on which you spent your youth. And succeeding brings so much of the world within the realm of experience for us. We can fly on the Concorde and take a trip on the Orient Express, cruise along the coast of China if you like, or fly over the poles. Succeeding brings the world within range, including much greater opportunity and success. We tend to perform well in the role in which we habitually see ourselves. Cruising around the Med could do wonders for our self-images. Who knows, we might find just the spot to build the loveliest little European-style American retirement village with all European capital. Well, there's just no end to the good ideas that some leisurely world travel might engender. Wandering around small, offbeat villages, who knows what we might see or pick up in the way of an unusual product, that might go over big back in the States. It's important that we think in new directions from time to time. The more often the better. Genius has been defined as the ability to think in new directions. After all, wasn't that what typified all the great geniuses you can think of? The great artists, composers, writers, inventors. They were all inventors, all creators. They all thought in new directions. In her marvelous book, The Aquarian Conspiracy, Marilyn Ferguson writes, "If we're not learning and teaching, we are not awake and alive. Learning is not only like health, it is health. One can be just as bored sitting in the cockpit of a yacht anchored in the harbor at Portofino as sitting in one's office in New York City at 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, but not if one is learning or teaching. Then boredom is never present. If you're at all like me, you require learning and teaching just about every day. I call it doing some work, but learning and teaching is what it amounts to. In my case, reading and writing, teaching. I need to know that I've done something worthwhile in order to fully enjoy my leisure time or a weekend. Perhaps that's the result of 30 years of working, but for me there must be a balance of work and play, both to be fully enjoyed. I'll never reach the age when I'm no longer interested in learning and putting what I have learned into language that others can understand, enjoy, and pass along. Now, what are the odds that a person following the guidelines of this program will actually succeed? I would say his chances of failure are virtually non-existent. The odds are overwhelmingly in one's favor. In fact, there's nothing else one can do but succeed. It's all in the goal and the planning that's subsequent to the establishment of that goal, if the person is a goal-oriented person. If the person's a river person, he or she is automatically a success as long as he or she is in that river. Remember the comment, the American people can become anything they want to become. The trouble is, they seldom make that decision. I woke up one morning about 15 minutes before the clock radio alarm was to sound off. A great experience to just lie back and luxuriate when there popped into my mind the thought that life is its own reward. It came to me that having life itself, life being such a miraculous achievement, is like winning the grand prize. What we do after that, what we do with our lives, is the frosting on the cake. We hear young people ask, what is the purpose of life? The purpose of life is service, and whatever we decide to do or be to provide that service, we can do whatever we want with it. That is the terrible, to me, wonderful freedom of the existentialists. Never before have I been as conscious of how stunning an achievement life itself is in all its forms. Perhaps that was how the great Dr. Albert Schweitzer felt about life, and why he was so reverent about it in all its multifarious forms. We're so lucky to actually experience life, to be given the opportunity to do something worthwhile for others as our way of earning our way here, just as they spend their days serving us in so many ways. It becomes important, then, for us to do our work as creatively, as excellently as we can, and to think of new and better ways to do those things it has been given us to do so that we can maximize our input during the time we spend working. I remember reading something about what an ongoing education will do for us, that it teaches us to love what doesn't cost very much, to love the sunrise and the sunset and the beating of rain on roof and windows or the gentle fall of snow on a winter day. And it went on to say that a good education teaches us to love life for its own sake. And that's what I had realized that morning when I woke up before the alarm sounded. Being alive, just being alive, makes us winners. From then on, anything we want to add to the achievement is up to us. It needn't be a lot in the eyes of the world, but we can find our place in the scheme of things and do our thing, make our contribution, whatever it happens to be. One morning recently, Diana and I were in Hawaii. It was only 5 o'clock in the morning and still pitch dark, but the sky was clear and so filled with stars it was like standing under a great black velvet pincushion studded with millions of bright, tiny lights winking like diamonds. We put on our bathing suits and walked out into the water until it was up to our shoulders. And we put our arms around each other and drank in the clean, warm breeze and luxuriated in the sea, now warm to our bodies. And as we watched, the sky in the east grew softly lighter until the great craggy old volcanic mountains were clearly outlined against the early morning sky. And what a joy it was. What a joy it is just to be alive.